everything that I kind of know and apply is almost like a cocktail of everything that I've ever learned. No one's ever told me one thing which I've then done. It's kind of that. I think the best thing I've ever done was...
Hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Mr MoneyJar show. This week we're joined by an accomplished financial content creator, Cameron Smith, otherwise known as Cazza. We talk about how he grew his online following to nearly 500,000 followers in the pandemic, how to manage money as a student and as a young professional, and some of his influences that got him into his personal finance and investing journey. He's without a doubt one of the most insightful and smartest people I've ever spoken to, and I know you're going to love this conversation. You're tuned into the Mr MoneyJar show. It's showtime. Welcome, Cameron.
Hello, Timmy.
Good.
Thank you for having me. A cliche starting sentence.
Yeah. How you feeling? Good?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, very good. How are you?
I'm good. Very busy week last week, lots of talks and stuff, but
Yes.
you know, the calendar could always be empty. So
I mean, yeah, I know the feeling.
but no, you're very impressive, man. We were speaking before, 80K on Insta.
Yes.
What was it 400 odd K on TikTok?
403 point something, 403.4, I think it might be now on TikTok. Yes.
Those aren't small numbers. That's nearly 500,000 people. So I'd love to talk to you today about how you started your platform, how you grew it. But yeah, just let us know a bit about yourself and what you do.
So as you said, my name is Cameron Smith, to be precise. Technical consultant by day, 9 to 5. And then by night, I am Cazza, but I go by Cameron as well on there too. So I guess the best place to start is where it all started.
Sure.
January 2021, one of the lockdowns. I've lost track of where they were. I tend not to think about it too much anymore. But so for context, I was in my 4th and final year at University of York doing a master's degree in electronic engineering. And yeah, so I downloaded TikTok probably around December time, probably reluctantly at the time, because TikTok was renowned as being like almost a predecessor of Musical.ly, music, dancing, that sort of thing.
Musical.ly, right?
Something like that. And when I downloaded it, I was consuming the usual content, comedy, gaming, films and TV, that sort of thing. And then I guess I ended up down a rabbit hole of educational content that was actually providing more than just entertainment value, but actually educational value. And there were influencers at the time creating this sort of content. One of them being a good friend of mine from school.
Who's that?
Timothy Paul.
You went to school together?
I did go to school with Timothy Paul.
Shout out Timothy. Great name.
Temper time.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was doing it at the time. He had left university by then. He had finished his 3 years, and he was making content about, I think at the time, university finance. He was going into a finance role. It just kind of got me thinking of I had a lot of time on my hands, essentially. Lockdown had basically ruined the final year of university. All I was doing was either online lectures or rugby. Those are the 2 things I did, or perhaps the odd rugby social. I think it was groups of 6 you were allowed to socialize in around then.
Yeah.
So I was a lot of free time and not a lot to do with it. If I wasn't playing FIFA or Pro Club, something like that, I was basically revising or going to rugby. And it just kind of dawned on me of what do I know? What things do I know? And at the time I'd obviously done my A-levels at college or sixth form. I'd gone to a high-ranking university that I'd got through the application process. So I knew about the application process for university. I was studying a STEM subject, electronic engineering. So I was quite technical. The revision's quite difficult. So I know how to revise. I know how to sit exams, virtual and in person. But I'd also, not to brag, but I was getting a first. I was guaranteed a first at the time.
You got the first in the end?
Yeah, I did get the first in the end.
Congrats, man.
So I was very proud of that. I'm glad I got it because I was working very hard for it at the time. And in light of all this, I'd also been accepted for my graduate scheme in the role that I'm currently in.
Right.
Which was a 2-year graduate scheme, so almost finished now, ending in September.
Yeah.
So I think it was safe to say that I had like a lot of knowledge that I developed over the past, like throughout the education system mainly. So that's where I kind of started creating content about things that I knew. Revision, it was mainly around university stuff because that's what I knew. I'd say my A-levels information was a bit outdated. Yeah, I think they changed the grading system from letters to numbers. I think it was like, oh no, that was GCSEs, they did that. I think A-levels were still A's to...
Back when I did GCSEs, the highest grade you could get was an A star.
Yeah.
And it was letters. And for AS and A levels, the highest grade you could get was an A.
Yeah.
And then I kept track of it when they changed it to A star for A levels. And I just haven't kept track of it since then.
I think it might, I don't think it's numbers for A levels yet. I think it's the same as you say for A levels in lettering.
Yeah.
But so where was I? Yeah, so I was talking about basically university stuff, university tips, revision tips, student finance I would talk a lot about. So that would be along the lines of student bank accounts, student credit cards, student finance, repaying it, how it's kind of calculated, how to budget that kind of money. Because these were all things that I was encountering throughout the 4 years that I was there. So I kind of, that's where I started creating that kind of content. I also was creating content around application centers as well, because I literally just completed one. I celebrated quite wildly when I got my acceptance letter for the job that I'm at now, because I just remember thinking, I think I got that in my 3rd year, and I just thought to myself, wow, I've got a job, amazing. So I was talking about that quite a bit. But then as like, you know, I was guaranteed that kind of first, I think so with COVID, because a lot of the exams got pushed to virtual, they had like a form of safety net that basically said if you couldn't fulfill your exam expectations, you had a safety net essentially. I think my safety net was a first because I'd done so well throughout the 2nd and 3rd year. So I was like, I basically patted myself on the back. I was like thanking myself for my past hard work. But when I had that kind of confirmation, I had my job lined up, I started to think more about what the future would hold for my life. Rather, you know, the university life is it's like a bubble. You know, your rent is essentially paid for by the government or by your parents if you're lucky like I was, or you're working a part-time job while you revise. It's a lot easier for some than others, which is understandable. But I was starting to think about the things that I'd be encountering when I leave university. And I knew how my life was going to look. I'd have a much larger income than I had at university. I think I was on $300 a month at university. But then again, my expenses were significantly lower as well, with my rent covered by student finance in the most part. So I'd have rent to pay, bills to pay. I wasn't planning to move back in with my parents. So I knew that renting in London wasn't going to be...
Where are your parents based?
They're also, so I actually live in the same town as my parents, because I wanted to live, so that zone 6 area, just because it was something I was familiar with, I understood, managed to get a really good deal on my rent. So that kind of plays into my, you know, my factors in expenses and stuff like that. What else was I going to have to deal with? You know, with having a job comes the pension, comes the income, the budgeting, everything like that. You know, also getting into that mindset of investing. You know, I'm going to have way more money than I'm used to. I can't just store it and spend it as you would at university, essentially.
But where did you hear about investing from the first time?
Yeah, so funnily enough, or probably not much of a surprise, it came from a lot of the content that I create, consuming the same kind of content. Right. Yeah. So to shout out, significant source of information was Ryan from Making Money Simple. Yeah. So as the name suggests, made it very simple, made it very easy to understand for someone like me who at the time just wasn't thinking about this kind of stuff really, was I? I was thinking about my exams, I was thinking about my job prospects. So you don't really think about these things that aren't an essential at the time. So consuming the content that I now create is what kind of built that foundation of which I've kind of grown to where I am today. And that's kind of what's brought me to here, where like my content has like transferred. It's kind of followed me as a person in the sense like what's currently important to me, what am I currently dealing with, what resonates with what I'm having to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So that is around the stuff around pensions, budgeting, saving money, investing. So these are the things that I like to talk about because they're things that I understand, things that I'm actually applying in my day-to-day. So I guess that brings us to here really, isn't it? So
there are loads of cool things that you said in there, Cameron. Firstly, didn't realize you went to the same school as Tim Pool. That's cool. I had the pleasure of meeting both of you actually at Avi TV's birthday party. That was a fun event. Massive shout out to Ryan. The cool thing about that is that when I first met Ryan, he was, I think, younger than you are now.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've known him for like 4 years, basically. And he's obviously been working for a fair bit, like he's moved. And it's just been really cool to see his journey, but then to know that his journey has given birth to like platforms like yours.
Yeah, I've never had the
really
pleasure
cool.
to meet him myself before he jetted off.
Yeah, hopefully he comes back. Although I'll completely understand if he doesn't, because he seems to be having a great time. So that's really cool. But I think something else that comes across, Cameron, is you're like a serious guy.
Mm.
You know, you are first from York in a very technical subject. You had a 2-year graduate scheme agreed with like a national telecoms company before you'd even left. You knew you were going to get a first pretty much. And I just wonder how much of that has translated over to the dedication and focus. Like how much of that has translated over into 500,000 followers in 2 years?
I think
it's
all about, I think it comes down to like understanding that like, it comes back to that kind of premise of compound interest. The small efforts you put in early on will compound massively into the future. So the same way why working hard in second and third year meant that my first year was significantly easier than it could have been. I knew people that were stressing just to push over that boundary to get a 2-1, or who wanted a first and knew they were just close enough if they worked that little bit harder. But the effort that I put in early on is what brought me to that stage. And it's almost like an unconscious effort. It's not like I'm thinking to myself, this is an investment of my time for a year down the line, 2 years, 3 years down the line. It's more of a kind of like, I've always had that disciplined mindset of like, this is I'm doing a good thing here. Like this is important now and it will be important in the future. I think that's something that's been kind of instilled in me throughout the whole education system, really. I've always been told what the next stage is and what I need to do to get there. From GCSE, it was all about, I think even thinking back to getting into my secondary school, you had to prove that you had a certain level of intelligence, in a way, I guess, is how they would explain it, because you don't know much as a 10-year-old. You sit these, what are they called, CAT exams, SATs as well, like these exams. It was all about like, what's the next stage and how do you get there? To get into the sixth form of the same school I was at, you had to get a certain amount of Bs or A's to C's, I think is what you had to get. And then to get into university, the levels set even higher. I think for I was actually quite lucky. I went through clearing to get into the University of York.
Okay.
I originally had applied for University of Nottingham and Warwick, both of which I think the lowest I could have got was A*, AA. And I was like...
I went to Warwick.
Did you? How did you find that? I know my cousin went to Warwick as well.
Yeah, I got 3 A's at A level.
Yeah.
But I just think it's gotten harder. I think because we were talking about how the grades have changed and like there's more levels and stuff. I feel like you have inflation with like money and stuff, but I also think you have inflation with grades and stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
You just have to do better and better relative to everyone else.
Well, exactly. You see it with the exam papers. Do you remember sitting exam papers that were 5 years older than you?
Yeah.
And you would just think this is so easy. And it's just the way it goes. I think maybe as a society we're getting smarter, or children are.
Hopefully.
I can know for a fact that I was smarter back then than I am now.
So that was going to be my next question to you, which is, has the working, how different do you find it working? Has that been a shock for you? Do you prefer real adult life to student life? Because I kind of look back on my time at uni with a degree of rose-tinted spectacles. And I would say my time working in the beginning wasn't the best. But I'm now enjoying working again because I'm an entrepreneur.
See, I think that premise of like, in the sense that I felt smarter back then. When I left at A level, I think I peaked at A level, sitting there. So I did maths, chemistry, physics, and I did the AS in biology. I dropped that one. But I just remember thinking to myself after I did it, how on earth did I do that? Like the A-level maths alone was 6 exams that progressively got harder. Or was it 5? A1 to 5, I think it may have been. I can't, it's so long ago now. It's actually quite sad. But I just thought to myself, like, wow, that was really difficult, but I've done it now. It's almost like climbing a hill. Once you get to the top, you kind of go, relax. And then you've got another hill to climb. And then during my A-levels, I just thought, wow, this is so much easier. No, during my degree, I mean, it just became so much easier because now I was only studying 3-4 things a year instead of, well, 4 things, but multiple modules, if in that sense, from A-level. But I feel like now that I've left the education system, it's all that kind of like, I've stopped that development, that constant growth, that constant like, what's next? It's kind of like you've got your job, you can progressively like upskill and become higher paid, join different companies, hop around. But actually you've kind of reached the pinnacle of that climb of the education system. And there's no one prodding you to say you need that grade or you need to be at this lecture or, in that sense. So I think it's almost like anticlimactic in that sense. But I think now that I'm settled in my job, I'm kind of like trying to find my feet. 2 years is a long time in the working world, but I still feel like I'm fresh in it. Like I'm not got much of a clue of what I really want out of it. Which is kind of why I'm doing this as well, the social media side of things, because that's where perhaps my passions really lie, not just the information I'm sharing, but also how I'm sharing it. That content creation is quite rewarding.
Let's talk about your platform, man. So I think your content is great. Every time it pops up on my feed, I'm like, I know it's going to be a good reel. You mainly do short form, always very well researched, very well shot, very well composed. I like the fact that you started to branch out into just out of your bedroom as well, and you started to take it off site. Thinking of the people listening, because we'll talk about your platform and like how you've grown it and stuff, but let's talk about your content, the things that you talk about. For people that are where you were a few years ago at university, or people who have just started their first job, what sorts of things do you think they need to know when it comes to money, particularly given the current economic climate?
I think, it depends. If you're talking a new starter at a role or a new leaver from university, I think that they're kind of one and the same. I'm going to assume that someone leaving university has a job. I think that's a safe assumption to make, or at least a target for most people. I think the first thing I think budgeting essentially is the foundation of all further decisions. A great tool to have for someone that has absolutely no idea where to start is with the Personal Finance UK flowchart, which have you seen?
It's on Reddit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on Reddit. They also have their wiki, which is on. And I think that's a great place to start for anyone who has absolutely no clue at all. And perhaps there's a bit more of a complicated, it's actually quite fun because for a lot of people, they get to skip a lot of the steps because they go, I'm fresh out of this. I don't have these debts. I don't have these, whatever. But I'd say budgeting is the ground floor for a lot of people for the most part. Understanding what money's coming in, where that money goes before it even reaches you, so obviously understanding how the tax system works. I'm sure like these are things that you'd be able to learn very quickly, especially on social media. It's quite a hot topic for a lot of people. But easy questions you can ask your role as well, like your HR system. They'll give you this kind of information. Understanding, I'm assuming if you went to university, understanding how your student loan is repaid. Basically, it's important to know where your money's going as well. Understand your pension, understand how that works. So when I started out, I knew because I had created this foundation of knowledge that I had learned before starting my role, I understood how the pension was working. It was with Standard Life, and I knew what I wanted to do with it. I knew what a pension is for. It's for the long term. It's invested. Not a lot of people understand that pensions are invested until you tell them, and they go, "Oh, really?" But you could just see that there was this knowledge gap between me and some of my colleagues, where they'd kind of be like, "Oh, why?" I think I'm not going to say names. She might see this, but she opted out of the pension, and I just had to explain to her why there was no point. You shouldn't have done that, like regardless of what your long-term plans are.
2 questions. Was she older than you? Or was she kind of one of your peers?
She was the exact same age.
Graduate scheme.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Exact same age.
And did she listen to you? Did she appreciate the
She
tips?
regretted the decision because it was more of like a window of an opt-in, opt-out window that you have with these pensions. You can only opt in or opt out. once a year.
Yeah.
So she'd missed that boat. Maybe that she's changed that since that was 2 years ago. So perhaps she's back on.
Yeah.
But it was just interesting because you don't realize what others don't know when you know it. Almost when it becomes common sense to you, you almost don't want to feel like you're patronizing people by expressing your knowledge in case they do know it and you think that you're coming across in the wrong way. But, you know, because I'd done this research, I'd understood how pensions work, I'd made videos about pensions before I even had one. I went into the pension. I wanted my pension out of the, you know, I think it's called like a standard life.
The default plan.
Yeah, the default lifetime plans. And I put it into something that I wanted it to be in because I understood how investing worked. I understood how pensions worked. And that was almost like my first, I'd already had my savings accounts and my investing accounts before that, but that was almost like my first kind of real life implementation of my knowledge where it was like, and then everyone around me didn't know what I was doing. Even some of the older colleagues, in fact, didn't really understand what I was doing because not financial advice and all, but I put it into a very high risk investment. And, you know, and I think I told my line manager about like, he was asking me how have I accessed the pension scheme and all that. And I was like, yeah, I've moved my money around. I've put it into something high risk. And he was like, oh, I have no idea how to do that. And of course I wouldn't explain it much further because it was my pension and I didn't want to come across as advising someone to do something they didn't want to do. But, you know, a pension is, I believe, what's the pension age? 55. I think when they send me my letter every year, they tell me that I'll access the pension in 2050 something. So it's not going to be for a while, but the fact that it was such a long-term investment meant that I was comfortable in putting it in something more high risk than the lifetime plans or whatever they call them.
Yeah. The age of access is 55 now, but it's going up to 57 in 2028. And by the time we get there, it'll probably be higher still because a lot of these ages go up. But yeah, more time in the market, more time for growth. Yeah. Hopefully.
Silver lining and all that.
Yeah. It's really cool that you went in and you moved it out of the plan that you wanted to move it into. I speak to people who don't want to be in the default plan. They'd prefer to be in an ethical plan and they do that. Did you do that by speaking to your HR department or did you log into the platform directly?
Exactly. Log in the platform directly. These are things that they make accessible, I guess, for this exact reason. So yeah, that's something I did. It was invested into the same thing that I invest in outside of my pension as well. Yeah. So it was kind of like, in terms of diversification, it made sense to invest in the exact same thing twice rather than over exposing myself to, say, a US market or a however other options they had.
Yeah. You talked about budgeting as well.
Yeah.
If we keep it actionable, what's your budgeting routine and what tips can you offer people on how to do that? Because for a lot of people, it's like they might do it once, but then they don't stick to the habit.
Yeah. So thanks for bringing me back on track. I forgot where we were
for
a minute there. But yeah, so I'd say, once you have your paycheck eventually paid into your current account, something I talk about all the time is paying yourself first, where you transfer that money into your savings and your investments and any other more long-term planned financial vehicles before you pay your expenses. I know that's quite a difficult thing for some people to do. So obviously this isn't like a, the be all or end all, but you definitely want to be doing that in a sense that it's completely hands off. It's completely out of your control. The human mind is very easily manipulated by itself in a way where like your emotions can really get a hold of like your decision making. So paying yourself first, having those things automated. I think automation is the best way to explain it, where this money is taken out of your current account automatically without your, you've set up that automatic direct debit through
or standing order.
Yeah, standing order, exactly. And these allow you to basically make these payments without your say, because given a second an option to cancel that payment or not make it, a lot of people might accidentally do that. That's that way.
Something that, pay yourself first. It can be quite an abstract concept for people who haven't heard of it before, but it's basically the idea that you're making a payment to your future self, right?
Yes.
Like either in the form of savings or investments. And like you will come to access that money at some point or be in the future, hopefully after that money's grown. I remember back in the day when I didn't have much of a saving habit, one of the things that tricked me into saving was actually a regular savings account. because with those, you put the money in every month and you get the interest payment at the end. And I really, really wanted the interest payment because I calculated like how much it would approximately be worth. But once you do that, once you get used to, okay, I've been paid this much, but then I'm going to transfer out this much like on or just after payday. You get so used to that by the end of doing that for 12 months, you're like, well, I'm just going to continue doing that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So at the moment, I've got 2 standing orders, one for my lifetime ISA and another one for my stocks and shares ISA.
Right.
And it's just completely instilled the same way my rent comes out at the same time every month, and I don't get to choose how much that is.
Yes.
It's just another payment that is part of my life.
Yeah. And also, deductions. Income tax comes out. Like, you don't pay it per se, but it does come out. And
exactly,
no matter how much it is, you just
student loan as well. It's all about that. That was a choice for me to go to university, was a choice, and now I have these standing orders that essentially get taken out of my paycheck before I get my hands on it. Which I just think is very important. It's just such an effective way to, like, if you're struggling to get started, a great way to start is by setting up a standing order, because now you're. Whereas, it's like saying like, oh, every month I'm going to do this. It's like, well, now you've got to hold yourself accountable to that. But if you say, this is going to do it for me, now you can remain accountable by not cancelling that direct debit or standing order.
Sure thing. I was having a little scroll on your socials earlier, and yeah, you've had a few videos, I think it's fair to say, have gone viral, have really taken off. What's one of your most viewed videos, and what were you talking about in it? Like, and why do you think it traveled so far?
So the one that comes to the top of my head is the video about child trust funds.
I remember that one, actually.
Yeah, so not something that personally I have. I don't have a trust fund. I think I'm too old for one, born in 98. But essentially, I think the reason why a video like that, so essentially for anyone who doesn't know what a child trust fund is, it's an amount of money that the government would have given you into essentially a cash or a stocks and shares child trust fund, I believe.
So between 2006 and 2011?
2002 and 2011. So I think the exact dates are September 2002 and January 2011.
There you go.
There you go. So essentially, the government would have given you, I believe, either £200 or £500, depending on your parents' income at the time. And then depending on whether it was a cash child trust fund or a stocks and shares child trust fund, that amount may be larger than the 200 or 500 that was initially given to you when you were born between those 2 dates. So, if you were born in September 2002 and they gave you £500 and you've had a solid 20 years of growth, who knows how much that could be. I couldn't promise you how much it would be. And essentially, when you turn 16, you get access to that account. When you turn 18, it then converts to either a cash ISA or a stocks and shares ISA, and that money's yours. And you can withdraw it or you can keep it in that account. You can move it about. And essentially, I made a video on that. Wasn't the first. Definitely a topic that people, again, like, just because it's common knowledge to some doesn't mean it is to others. And the thing with social media is that the reach is endless. You forget how many people are on these platforms, and just because you reached 1 million once doesn't mean you're going to reach the same million again. Even when we're talking thousands as well, especially. So when I made this video, I formatted it in a way that was easy to grasp, easy to understand, engaging in a way that it was thought-provoking, perhaps gripping with that two-way conversation style. And I think it's with TikTok and these algorithms, they're not completely, but mostly dependent on watch time and engagement, isn't it? So if you watch a video full way through, I believe the video is 20 seconds. If they liked it, if they commented, a lot of the comments were people asking if they have these trust funds. A lot of the time it was an unfortunate no, because it was people that were either too old or not from the UK. But that's just what these algorithms kind of feed into, is that grippingness and that relatability of, like, are you born between these years? Were you born in these 10-year gap? This is an audience that is engaged.
I realized why I said 2006 earlier as well, because that's the year my brother was born and he has one.
Yeah. Well, my brother must have one as well then, because he was 2003.
Yeah.
I think.
No, that's really cool, man. Taking something which exists, we know that information exists on the internet already, but repurposing it and just making it accessible to a new audience.
Well, that applies with all the knowledge that I do. Like, everything that I do is very simple and actionable and repeatable. You don't have to be an expert to do any of the things that I'm doing, nor am I an expert in these investing or saving money, but to open a lifetime ISA or to open a stocks and shares ISA or to format a budget spreadsheet, you don't have to be an expert to do these things. But you may feel like you're rehashing this information again and again. That's so obvious to you. And you're like, oh, people are thinking this is all I know. But that's all it is. That is really as simple as it gets. And it's the kind of, this is the information that actually helps people, the stuff that's actionable and actually someone can do from a video. But the whole point of my videos is to be more thought-provoking and question raising people who want to learn more about topics that I talk about, because that's what else can you learn in 30 seconds, really? If you want to learn more, you need to research it yourself. And that is often what the DMs I get are doing. They're referring you on to more information. Or if there's something that I can explain more, if it's more of a personal question about what I do, then I can elaborate on those things.
So you're like a conduit. Yeah.
In a way, yeah, because I feel like there's a real gray area, especially with what people understand financial advice being. Like, you need to make sure that people understand that that's not what it is, but also they need to understand what financial advice actually is compared to financial guidance. That's why I'm a conduit of information who will guide you to where you can find more information, or perhaps other creators where they've made a video because I often do just refer people on to what videos made me what I do, helped me get onto that ladder as well. Ali Abdel has a great video on how to start investing. Even the title itself is so, welcoming. I think it is How to Start Investing for Beginners. So it's like, you can't get any simpler than that.
Is Ali Abdel another influence of yours?
Yeah, someone who I've watched quite a few videos of. Yeah, I do like his, he does a lot of spirituality and personal development stuff, but his finance stuff is stuff that I definitely watched a lot of in my early days. Starting out on these things, I wanted to make sure I'd get it right. So I didn't watch a couple of TikToks and then instantly open up a stocks and shares ISA and transfer £500, which is the minimum for a Vanguard stocks and shares ISA. I made sure I was getting this right. And I made sure that I knew what I was getting myself into, which is why there's all this content is so useful. And again, it started was with Ryan or Making Money Simple's one of his 20-second, 30-second videos.
I'm really happy that the conversation's gone down this track, because I'm 10 years older than you, and I see myself as I feel like I'm not entirely your generation, but I feel like I'm not entirely the generation that's older than me as well. I often find myself going back and forth between the two. So I'm clearly not the TikTok generation. When TikTok came out, I actually was like, I'm going to see how other people use this thing first before I put myself on it. But I'm also not I'm not a parent to someone whose child has a child trust fund either. So when I speak to these people that are slightly older than me, a lot of the conversation is oh, what do you think about all these young people getting their financial education on the internet? Do you think this is a good trend? Do you think this is a worrying trend? And I really hope that these people watch this episode and see this is the product of the social media age. This is someone who at uni watched videos online, didn't just watch one TikTok, actually took the time to do the due diligence, and then is now creating that same content and helping other people. I think that social media is neutral. I think it's an amplifier for how people already are and things people were already sharing. And I choose to use it, and it sounds like you do as well, choose to use it as a force for good. It's a way to reach tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people with stuff that they never would have seen anyway. Because I've read a lot of books. But I know that people may not necessarily have the time or the inclination to do so. So to have another platform where you can reach people, and you're doing it so well as well, I think it's great.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. I really enjoy your content as well. And obviously you've got that more public facing reach as well, which I think is really good. I think what you're doing is incredible in especially your confidence and your ability to public speak. And obviously you're more of a conduit than I am.
Oh, thank you. We're all just fighting the same fight, but albeit from different angles. And when you're ready, or if you're ready, if you want to start doing events, like I'm here, you can talk to me. I can share my learnings with you, because when I first started out, I've gone back and I've seen the first videos, the first talks I did. I was very shy and I was very like nervous and stuff, but it is just repetition. And as we were saying before, I'll do a talk, I'll speak for 60 minutes, and then I'll take questions at the end and I'll answer all the questions, but they are questions I've been asked over and over again.
Yeah.
So to them, it looks like, wow, he knows this, but it's like, no, like I first got asked this in like 2020, and I'm just...
Do you ever get worried that it's the same audience twice?
Sometimes you see the same people twice, but to your point about, there's this thing of like, when you are an expert in any area, any niche, you can just repeat yourself over and over again, right? We specialize in money, but there are other people that specialize in health and fitness or food or whatever the case may be. I don't actually mind being told over and over again, like what the correct exercise is to do, because that's not my area. It's a finite
amount of information, isn't it? You can't create this stuff, do you?
Yeah, so it's not my area. So being told the same stuff for me just it fills me with confidence, because it reinforces it for me. And I hope that even if people hear us saying the same thing over and over again, they just go, okay, great. I heard that 6 months ago, but I'm hearing it again now, and I'm doing it now, and that just fills me with confidence. Great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your platform, the Cazza Time platform. Tremendous growth, huge engagement. For people that are trying to grow their platforms now, or maybe they're just getting started, do you have any tips for them?
Enjoy the content you're making. Like, have an actual interest, not necessarily a passion. Passion is a very strong word, I'd say, but an interest in them, like as a minimum, into the content you're making, because you know that phrase of if you love what you do, you won't work a day in your life.
Yeah.
Applies in the same in the content creation side of things. You don't want to be making content that you don't enjoy or that you don't appreciate. Even if the audience are loving it, even if you're getting millions of views, if you don't love it or enjoy the content you're making, then you're going to fatigue. You're going to get tired.
And it is a slog, isn't it?
It is, like, especially when like these algorithms are so volatile in the way that they show your content. You have no control over you don't own your audience in that sense. You almost rent their time, don't you? So if you're not enjoying the content and now all of a sudden you're not getting the engagement that you were getting for that content you didn't like, it's a double whammy, and you're going to completely fall off, aren't you? You're not going to, that consistency is what keeps people around, especially when you start building that community. You want to feel like the community you've built have the same values as you, the same interests, so that whatever you talk about that you like, they'll also resonate with that content. So that's something I'm trying to, migrate into, because you've got to be careful not to just keep rehashing the same content, especially if your follower growth starts to, plateau. In the sense, you're now speaking to the same people day in, day out. Every time you make a video, it's going to the same people, especially on Instagram. I really do like Instagram, because you feel like you are making it to the feed of your followers. You check the analytics and you'll say half of your following saw the video. And it's like, wow, that's actually quite rewarding. Stories as well is in the same sense. But what I kind of want to start getting into is more like real life stuff, because I do like, telling people I have a job, by the way. Like, this isn't a full-time thing. I do rent. I don't live at home with my parents. I do pay bills. Like, the cost of living is affecting me. Obviously, it affects people in different ways, but I'm not, just a complete conduit of information who just like a megaphone in that sense.
Yeah, there's a person
behind it. So that's why I'm kind of like, instead of just talking about these things that I do, show them. Like, and I do love that creative side as well. I do like different formats. As you say, I ventured out of the bedroom, and I go in the living room sometimes. But like, I do want to like do more outdoor stuff. I see what other people are doing, and I do think, wow, that's like, it's fun, and in the right format, you can engage people and educate them at the same time, rather than just one or the other. In that sense,
it can feel with social as well. It can feel like there's a new platform, seemingly a new platform or a new way to post on the platform, seemingly every 6 months.
It's that competitive market, isn't it?
Certainly every year.
Yeah,
certainly at least annually. So we've just had Threads come out at the time of recording in the last few weeks. Do you feel a sense of obligation to be on every new platform that comes out? Or do you feel like, do you know what? I've got my $500,000 on the platforms I'm comfortable with. I'm good.
No, because I feel like it's always about that first mover's advantage. So I do owe a lot of success that I've had on TikTok, especially, to being one of the first movers. You know, starting in 2021, that is how I've gotten to the growth that I've had now. Whereas I've seen people who start in 2020, and it's different. We talk about it all the time whenever I meet with other creators. You talk about how things have changed. So nothing's guaranteed as it was back then, perhaps. But I feel like an obligation to be on Threads, it was kind of such an easy transition. You know, you literally just said, I accept that you can harvest my data. And then you had access to this essential Twitter copycat, didn't you? I've tried it out, but it's not the same as, you don't have the same community around you, because again, it's a new platform. Who knows, it might mature a bit. You might start to see the people you follow, but any followings that people have had that currently have on their platforms are from people who've signed up and have ticked the box to follow everyone they're already following, essentially. So I think right now, I must be on like maybe just under 5,000. I wonder how many people didn't follow me back after automatically, but we'll see. I don't think I'll ever find out. But I've kind of tried using it. I've tried, providing that value in more of a text-based format. But a lot of people are praising Zuckerberg for the creation of he's brought back text-based content. Or I hope the videography, the content creators don't come over here and start posting reposting their stuff. So I've not really done that. I've kind of more used it as a way to almost another means to show that personal side of things. So something that I do quite a bit is I've only posted probably about 10 times on it, but it's been out for a week, so it's not too bad or so. I like charity shopping. Or thrifting, some people call it. I like going to the reduced sections in these expensive supermarkets and seeing what you can find there. It's almost like, I like that hunt of finding like a good deal and feeling like you saved money on something you wanted anyway. The key bit that you wanted anyway, of course. So I like to show that. I'll be like, look what I found. Doesn't get the same kind of engagement that a video would if I probably went to these stores and filmed, but maybe that's something for another day, because it's something that I find interesting, something that I enjoy. So it's something that that's gonna come across in the content, isn't it, in the quality? But yeah, how have you found Threads?
Well, I have a theory about why they launched it.
I want to hear it.
Journey with me. So in 2021, Meta said that Instagram was no longer a square photo sharing app. And then 2 years later, they launched Threads. And I also noted that Elon Musk limited tweet view limits for unregistered users and people who are registered but didn't have Twitter Blue or something like that.
Oh, like you would access an account and it would say log in or sign up.
Yeah. And the reason why I did that was because companies were scraping the text to feed their large language models for their AI tools. So I was like, is Meta launching Threads so that we can all pour text into it so that they can launch their own chat GPT rival? And I saw in an article last week, they're launching a chat GPT rival within the next 12 months.
Wow.
Now, obviously, they don't just have Threads. They have over 20 years worth
Instagram,
of data
WhatsApp,
from Insta, Facebook, all of that.
Yeah.
But it's just another thing. And then also, it's been a bit tumultuous on the Twitter side of things. And I was speaking to my friend about this, and he described it as a land grab. So it's just, Twitter's having a bit of upheaval.
Yeah.
So let's just make our own version of it and just acquire some of that market share. So that's what I think about the platform, the business, the platform, the user experience. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I'd love a cover photo. My profile looks a bit bald. It's just this white space.
Yeah, I think a way to pin as well would be quite nice.
Yeah,
I don't know,
but they'll build it all in. The thing about Meta is that they copy. They've always done that. But
Instagram didn't have stories before they copied Snapchat.
And even Facebook was borrowed so much from MySpace, Reels from TikTok. But the thing is, they rarely miss.
Yeah.
When they do this stuff, I think the only major failure that I can think of is IGTV, which was their attempt to copy YouTube. Because YouTube, it's its own kind of thing.
As in
it's a
YouTube, long form
video, and that's been subsumed into Reels now.
Yeah.
But I think Threads will probably be a success. They've got 100 million users. when you got billions of people on your platform, you can just move them to where you want to, like that you'll probably do well.
Yeah, I do wonder what it will look like. Like, I hope it kind of matures, as I said, just to a way that it's a bit more like you can build that community. I feel like, as I said, any following that people have is something they've already gained from Instagram.
Sure.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting platform. I think I'm going to see where it goes, but it becomes a thing where if you're not careful, you're constantly thinking about content. Sometimes you just want to enjoy the moment, don't want to think about, how can I make this witty? How can I, let me get a picture of that and post it to wherever. So that's why, I guess that's why I have my studio. I film from within my flat, because it means if I'm not careful, you don't enjoy these moments. If I've always got a camera on my shoulder, no excuse not to film everything in that way. So yeah.
I've really enjoyed today's conversation, Cameron. Been really cool just to learn a bit more about you, a bit more about your journey.
No, thank you for having me. Yeah.
There's a question that we like to ask everyone just to conclude, and then we can you can share your socials with everyone as well. And the question is, what's the best piece of money advice you've ever received? Who shared it with you, and what did you learn?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think it's got to be around investing. I think, do you know what it is? I don't think advice, because it's everything that I kind of know and apply is almost like a cocktail of everything that I've ever learned. No one's ever told me one thing which I've then done. It's kind of that. I think the best thing I've ever done was the first time I ever risked money. And that's kind of what's been the big bang of like the whole journey that I made. And it was first time I ever did. I wouldn't recommend doing it just because it's a bit of a grey area, a bit match betting. It's supposed to be, on paper, is a complete risk-free means of making money in that sense. I used, what was it called? It was called, I can't remember the exact platform. It's basically a free website that shows you how to do it. And I just remember thinking at the time, I was like, I'm going to give this a go. Like, what have I got to lose? I think you had to put in £100 and I ended up pulling out 200 in the end. It wasn't a lengthy process, nor was it too complicated. This platform, do you know the name of it? It's called,
I've never done match betting before.
So, but the fact that I kind of risked money with the hope of making more kind of like broke that barrier, that glass ceiling of like, oh, I only want to save, I only want to keep. I don't want to, because you need to do more than just save money. You can't save your money forever because it's invested at some point down the line. So kind of risking that money just broke me through that glass ceiling of like, I'm now comfortable with that risk. I'm more risk adverse. Whereas before, I don't think I would even buy something if there was a risk I wouldn't get full value out of using it. Whereas doing that for the first time just kind of broke me through that barrier. Now it's something that I did before I did TikTok, I remember. And that's kind of what triggered that interest in investing and risking money in the hopes of making more. I haven't done match betting for 4 years now, but that was like where it started. And I think in terms of advice, I just think like investing is very important. Like I'm not going to advise you to do it, but it's something that's definitely worth reading into, understanding. It's something you're probably doing whether you know it or not through your pension. If you own a house, that's a form of investing. Everything where the value of what you have has a chance of going up and down is a form of investment, particularly the up bit. So, so I think definitely getting like understanding what risk is. I think that word risk scares people in a lot of ways. As soon as you hear the word risk, their barriers go up. Whereas I think it's important to just understand that, maybe even, toy with the idea of risking something. So yeah, I'd say that's the best advice I ever received. I can't remember who told me to do match betting. It probably was a form of content off TikTok that told me to do it. But becoming more risk adverse is something that's definitely played a huge part in where I am and how I feel about money and everything like that.
Nice. Great point at which to end it, mate. For people who want to find you online, what's the name of your platform?
Instagram, Cazza_time. That's CAZZA. And then on TikTok, same handle without the underscore. So just full Cazza time.
Nice. Thanks very much for coming on, Cameron. It's been
Thank
great
you.
to chat.
Hello everyone, thank you very much for watching this week's episode of the Mr MoneyJar Show. If you enjoyed it, then please do subscribe, as it helps out the show a lot and enables us to continue running. Anyway, we'll be back next week with another special guest. I've been your host, Timmy Merriman Johnson.